The bowl lands on the table with a sound I will never forget. Not a crash. Not a slam. Something worse. A deliberate, ceramic click. The kind that happens when someone places something down carefully because they want you to understand it was a choice. It is Christmas Eve. 7:30 in the evening. The dining room at Patricia Holloway's house smells like roasted lamb and expensive candles, and something underneath both of those things. Something cold and decided. The way a room smells when someone has already made up their mind before the guests arrived. The table seats 10. White linen. Crystal glasses catching the candlelight. Gold charger plates under every setting. My husband Daniel sits at the far end talking to his brother Marcus. My father-in-law Raymond is pouring wine. My sister-in-law Candace is laughing at something on her phone. Nobody is looking at the head of the table. Nobody is looking at Patricia. Nobody is looking at what Patricia just set down in front of my daughter. Nora is 6 years old. She is wearing the red velvet dress she picked out herself 3 weeks ago. The one with the white lace collar that she has asked to put on every single morning since we bought it. She has been talking about Christmas dinner at Grandma Patricia's since October. She colored a card for her grandmother with careful, serious attention, pressing the crayons hard the way she does when something matters to her. She carried it in her lap the whole drive over. The bowl in front of her is not a plate. It is a dog bowl. White ceramic with a paw print painted on the side in blue. The kind you buy at a pet supply store for $11. It has been filled with plain white rice. No lamb. No roasted potatoes. No glazed carrots that are sitting in a serving dish 2 feet away. Just rice. In a bowl meant for an animal. Nora looks at it. Then she looks up at her grandmother. Patricia smiles and sits down at the head of the table and shakes out her napkin. And not one person at that table says a word. I am standing in the doorway between the kitchen and the dining room. I came to bring in the bread basket. I am holding it with both hands. I feel the warmth of it against my palms, and I stand completely still, and I look at my daughter looking at that bowl, and I make a decision so quietly that it does not even feel like a decision. It feels like a door closing. I set the bread basket on the kitchen counter. I take my phone from my pocket. I open one application. I make one change that takes less than 40 seconds. Then I walk into the dining room and smile at the table like nothing happened. My name is Elena Vasquez-Holloway, and I am 34 years old. I am a certified estate planning paralegal. I have worked for the same firm, Greer and Associates, for 9 years. I am the person attorneys trust to build the documents that protect what families spend their whole lives making. I know trust the way other people know their own handwriting, the structure of them, the language of them, the ways they can be built to hold, and the ways they can be built to release. I am also the woman Patricia Holloway has spent 6 years trying to make invisible. What Patricia does not know, as she cuts into her lamb and compliments Candace on her earrings, is that 40 seconds ago I changed the trustee notification email on a document that has existed for 4 years. The document Patricia has never been told about. The one with her granddaughter's name on the second line. What Patricia does not know is that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, a letter is going to arrive at this house. She is going to read her granddaughter's name on that letter, and she is going to remember the dog bowl. I sit down next to Nora. I move the bowl to the edge of the table without comment. I put a proper plate in front of my daughter from the stack at the center. I serve her lamb and potatoes and glazed carrots. I pour her juice. Nora looks at me with those careful brown eyes, the ones that are always deciding whether something is safe to feel. I cut her lamb into small pieces the way she likes. In 48 hours, Patricia Holloway is going to need something from me. I am going to be the only person who can give it to her, and she has absolutely no idea. Before I tell you what was in that letter and what happened when she read it, hit subscribe and drop your city and local time below. I want to know where you are listening from tonight. Now let me take you back to where this really started, 6 years ago. On the day I met the woman who would spend half a decade trying to erase my daughter from her family. I met Daniel Holloway when I was 26, and he was 29, and we were both standing in the parking lot of a grocery store in the rain arguing with a shopping cart that would not release from the return rack. He solved my problem. I solved his. We stood there for 11 minutes talking in the rain without either of us acknowledging that we were getting completely soaked, and by the time we walked to our cars my shoes were ruined, and I already knew I was going to marry him. Daniel is a good man. I want you to understand that before I tell you about his mother, because this story is not about Daniel failing me. It is about Daniel being raised by a woman who taught him that love and approval are the same thing. Which means he spent years not seeing what was in front of him, because seeing it would have required him to separate those two things, and that is the hardest surgery a person can perform on themselves. His mother Patricia is 71 years old. She has silver hair that she has blown out every Thursday for 30 years. She lives in a 4-bedroom house in Maplewood that she refers to as modest, while it sits on half an acre with a heated driveway. She taught second grade for 22 years and retired at 55 and has spent the 16 years since cultivating a very specific version of herself, warm, devoted, grandmotherly, that she performs for audiences and removes the moment the audience leaves. I saw it the first time I met her. We had dinner at her house, Daniel and I, 3 months after the parking lot. Patricia made chicken piccata and set the table beautifully, and asked me thoughtful questions about my work and my family with her head tilted at the precise angle that communicates genuine interest. She was remarkable at it. I am someone who reads documents for a living. I am trained to look for what is missing, not just what is present, and even I almost missed it. What I noticed was the way she looked at me when Daniel was not looking at her. Not hostile. Something more precise than hostile. Evaluating. The way you look at a contract clause that concerns you. Not because it is wrong, but because it is inconvenient and you're already thinking about how to work around it. I filed it away. Said nothing. 3 months later, Daniel proposed. Patricia hugged me at the engagement dinner and held on 4 seconds longer than warmth requires, and whispered near my ear that she hoped I understood how important family was to the Holloways. I said I did. She pulled back and smiled, and the smile was perfect. I filed that away too. We were married 11 months later. Nora came 2 years after that, small and furious and perfect, with Daniel's dark hair and my grandmother's stubborn mouth. The moment the nurse put her in my arms, I felt something shift in me, like a foundation settling. Something that had always been slightly uncertain becoming absolutely fixed. Nora was 6 days old when I first understood what Patricia intended. She came to the hospital with a gift bag. Inside was a sleep suit, expensive, the kind with the hand-stitched details, and a card. The card had Nora's name on the envelope, but inside it said, "Welcome to the Holloway family." Not our family. The Holloway family. Nora's last name is Vasquez-Holloway. Patricia has never once used the first half. Over the next 6 years, I cataloged what Patricia did the way I cataloged discrepancies in estate documents, methodically, without emotion, because emotion clouds pattern recognition, and I needed to see the pattern clearly. She displayed photos of Oliver throughout the house, on the mantel, on the hallway wall, on the refrigerator. The single photo of Nora was on a bookshelf in the guest room, half hidden behind a plant. At family dinners, she served Oliver from the good dishes and let him choose first from serving plates. Nora was served last, if there was enough, from whatever remained. None of this was loud. None of it was the kind of thing you can hold up in a room and say, "Look at this, see this, name this." It was 100 small calibrations, each one deniable, together forming something unmistakable. Daniel saw pieces of it. When I named it directly, carefully, without accusation, he would get very still in the way that means he is fighting the surgery I mentioned. He loves his mother. He loves his daughter. For a long time, he could not hold both of those truths at the same time and see what the space between them actually was. The person who saw it fully, from the beginning, was my grandmother. Rosa Vasquez is 78 years old. She came from Guadalajara at 22 with $40 and a certificate in seamstress work and spent the next 50 years building a life with a discipline and a patience that I have never seen matched. She is 4'11", and she can silence a room by walking into it. She taught me to sew, to cook, to read a contract before I signed it, and to understand the difference between a person who makes a mistake and a person who makes a choice. When Nora was 8 months old, my grandmother held her on her lap at my kitchen table and watched me describe Patricia's patterns. And when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, and then she said the thing she would say to me 3 more times before the story ended. Mija, the people who try to make your child small are always afraid of how large she will become. I did not fully understand it then. I stored it the way I store everything that matters, carefully, in a place I could find it again. When Nora was 2 years old, my grandmother called her estate attorney, a woman named Clara Mendes who has been managing my grandmother's affairs for 15 years. I was not in that meeting. I did not know about it. My grandmother told no one. What I know now is that on a Tuesday afternoon in February, while I was at work reviewing a revocable living trust for a client, my grandmother was 3 miles away building one of her own. The years between Nora's birth and that Christmas Eve taught me one primary thing about Patricia Holloway. She was always most dangerous when she felt most certain. The certainty had been building for 2 years, since Daniel's father Raymond retired and the family began discussing, in that circling way families discuss money, what would happen to Patricia and Raymond's estate, the house, the investments, the beach property in Maine that had been in Raymond's family since 1987. Patricia had strong opinions about what responsible estate planning looked like. She shared them regularly. Estate assets should stay within the direct Holloway line. Spouses were family by marriage, not by blood. Children carried the family forward. She said this at dinners, at holiday gatherings, at the kind of casual moments that are designed to sound like observations and function like policy statements. The implication about Nora was never spoken directly. It did not need to be. Vasquez-Holloway is a hyphenated name. Half of it is not Holloway. Patricia understood fractions. What Patricia did not know, what I had told no one except Daniel, and Daniel had told no one except his own conscience, was that 9 months earlier my grandmother had called me into her kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, poured 2 cups of coffee, and pushed a folder across the table. Inside the folder was a trust document, 11 pages, prepared by Clara Mendes, executed, witnessed, and notarized 4 years prior. The Rosa Maria Vasquez Irrevocable Family Trust. I read it the way I read every document, from the beginning, slowly, without skipping. By the 3rd page, my hands were not entirely steady. By the 7th page, I understood why my grandmother had waited until now to show it to me. She had been waiting until the threat was clear enough that I would understand why the protection was necessary. The trust held my grandmother's house, paid off in 1991. Her investment account, built over 50 years of seamstress work and careful saving. A life insurance policy. Total value as assessed 18 months prior. $1.1 million. The sole primary beneficiary was my daughter, Nora Elena Vasquez-Holloway. Age listed as 4 at the time of execution. I looked up from the document. My grandmother was watching me with the particular patience of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and is finally setting it down in the right place. She is the only one who will still be here to use it, my grandmother said. I am not leaving it to you because you do not need it. I am leaving it to her because I have seen what that woman intends. And your daughter deserves to have something in this world that nobody can evaluate her worthiness to receive. I could not speak for a moment. Does anyone else know? I asked. Clara knows. God knows. Now you know. Patricia. My grandmother picked up her coffee cup. Patricia, she said, is not a named party in any document I have ever signed. I drove home the evening with the folder on the passenger seat, and I thought about the way Patricia had looked at me at the engagement dinner. That evaluating look, the contract clause look. I thought about every birthday card without a check, every meal served last, every photograph on a bookshelf behind a plant. I thought about my grandmother at 22 with $40 and a seamstress certificate building something so quietly over 50 years that the people who underestimated her never even knew to look for it. That night, I opened my laptop and I reviewed the trust document one more time. Then I called Clara Mendez and introduced myself formally as a paralegal at Greer and Associates, and we had a 45-minute conversation about the document structure, its provisions, and its notification protocols. There was one thing I asked Clara to add: a trustee notification trigger, an automatic letter to be sent to the address of my choice at a date of my choosing, notifying the recipient of the trust's existence and the named beneficiary. Clara asked who the recipient should be. I gave her Patricia Holloway's address. Then I set the trigger date 18 months out and closed my laptop. I was not ready yet. The time was not right yet. I waited. The way my grandmother taught me. Patience is not the absence of action. She used to say, threading a needle without looking. It is knowing which action to take and exactly when to take it. 2 weeks before Christmas, I was sitting at my desk at Greer and Associates reviewing a client file when my phone buzzed with a notification from the trust management portal Clara had set up. A reminder. Notification trigger date approaching. Current setting. December 26th. I sat with that for a moment. Then I thought about the Christmas dinner invitation Patricia had sent, paper, mailed, formal, that specified the guest list by name. Daniel Holloway. Elena Holloway. Not Vasquez-Holloway. Holloway, not Nora Vasquez-Holloway. Nora Holloway. She had been doing this for years, editing my daughter's name on paper the same way she edited her presence at the table. I picked up my phone and I moved the notification trigger date. Not December 26th, December 25th, 9 a.m. Christmas morning. I want to be honest with you about what I felt when I did that. It was not triumph. It was not the satisfaction people imagine when they picture a moment like this. It was something quieter and more serious. The feeling I get when I finish a trust document correctly, when I read back through it and every provision is exactly right and the person it is meant to protect is genuinely protected. That is what I felt. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. Mom wants to know if Nora is still doing the gluten-free thing or if she can eat normally now. I stared at that text for a long time. Nora has never had a gluten sensitivity. She has never done a gluten-free thing. Patricia knew this. This was not a question about diet. I knew then. The way you know when a document has been tampered with. That Christmas dinner was already planned. The role Nora was going to be assigned had already been decided. Patricia had been certain for so long about so many things that she had stopped being careful. Certainty is its own kind of blindness. I texted Daniel back. She eats everything. She is looking forward to dinner. Then I set my phone face down and went back to work. The notification was already scheduled. I had nothing left to do but wait. I almost changed it back. I want you to know that. The night before Christmas Eve, I sat at the kitchen table after Nora was asleep, and I opened the portal on my laptop, and I looked at the trigger date for a long time. December 25th, 9 a.m. Patricia Holloway's address. The thing about being the person who fixes things, and I have been that person my whole life, The one who reads the contract before anyone else. The one who catches the error before it costs someone. The one who stays pitiful so other people can fall apart. Is that the fixing reflex does not have an off switch. It just finds new things to fix. And sitting there in my quiet kitchen, I could feel it firing. That old reflex. Fix this before it becomes a scene. Send the letter after Christmas. Keep the peace one more time. Nora is 6. She will not remember the Christmas dinner where Grandma Patricia was cold. I almost convinced myself. Then I got up and walked to Nora's bedroom door and stood in the hallway looking at her through the gap. She was asleep on her side with her red velvet dress, the Christmas dress, hung on the outside of her closet door, ready for tomorrow. She had asked me 3 times that week if Grandma Patricia would like her dress. Not whether Grandma Patricia would like her. Whether Grandma Patricia would like her dress. 6 years old. Already translating the question into something smaller. Already making herself easier to accept. I stood in that hallway, and I thought about my grandmother at 22 with $40 and the decision she made then that was still protecting my daughter now. 56 years later. I thought about what she said. The people who try to make your child small are always afraid of how large she will become. I went back to the kitchen. I closed the laptop without changing anything. If you have ever had to choose between what was easy and what was true, tell me in the comments below. I read every one. And stay with me, because what happens next? I could not have planned if I tried. Christmas Eve. I have already told you about the bowl. What I have not told you is what happened at the table after I served Nora her proper plate. Patricia watched me do it. She did not say anything. She simply picked up her wine glass and turned to Daniel and began a conversation about Marcus's new apartment, and the table reorganized itself around this new topic the way tables do when a moment needs to be buried. Daniel had not seen the bowl. He had been talking to Marcus when it happened. I did not tell him at the table. This was not because I was protecting Patricia. It was because this moment, this specific moment, was not the one I had chosen. I had already chosen my moment, and it was 9 hours away. After dinner, in the kitchen, washing dishes beside Candace, I heard Patricia in the dining room say to Raymond in a voice calibrated to Carrie, "The children are so different, aren't they? Oliver has such natural Holloway confidence. Some children just have it, and some children are still finding their way." Candace kept washing dishes. I kept washing dishes. Nora was in the living room showing Raymond the card she had made for Patricia. The one with the careful crayon pressing. Raymond was looking at it with genuine warmth. He is not Patricia. He has never been Patricia. That is its own complicated truth. We drove home at 10. Nora fell asleep in her car seat before we reached the end of Patricia's street. Daniel drove. I sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window at the Christmas lights on the houses we passed, and I was the calmest I had been all day. I set my alarm for 8:45 a.m. I already knew what the morning would bring. I just did not know yet which version of Patricia would answer the door. Christmas morning, 8:59 a.m. I am in my kitchen making coffee. Daniel is upstairs with Nora, who has been awake since 6:30 and has already opened her gifts and is currently explaining to her father in detailed and urgent terms why the art set she received requires immediate use. My phone shows 8:59. I pour my coffee. 9 o'clock. Somewhere across town a letter is printing from a postal notification service, addressed to Patricia Ann Holloway, 14 Birchwood Drive, Maplewood. The letter is 1 page. It is from the offices of Clara Mendez, attorney at law. It references the Rosa Maria Vasquez Irrevocable Family Trust, established 4 years prior. Current assessed value $1.1 million. It names the trustee. It names the sole primary beneficiary, Nora Elena Vasquez-Holloway. Both names. The whole name. I am on my second cup of coffee when my phone rings at 9:22. Patricia. I let it ring twice, not to be dramatic, because I am standing at my kitchen window watching the snow that fell overnight on our backyard, and I want to finish the thought I am having, which is about my grandmother at 22, $40, a city she did not know, and a life she built anyway with her hands. I answer on the third ring. Patricia, what is this letter? Her voice is not a question. It is a door being pushed against a wall. Which letter? You know which letter. Clara Mendes. A trust. Nora's name. A pause. The sound of paper. This is your grandmother's estate. Yes. She left it to Nora. She did. Silence. I counted. 1 second. 2, 3, 4. Why? One word. Flat. I set my coffee cup down on the counter. Because my grandmother spent 50 years building something for the person she trusted most to use it well. Nora is 6 years old. The trust matures when she is 25. Clara manages it until then. Another silence. Longer. You knew about this. I have known for 9 months. You sat at my table last night and said nothing. I look out at the snow in the backyard. There is a cardinal on the fence post. Red against white. I sat at your table last night, I say, and watched you serve my daughter rice in a dog bowl. The silence that follows this is the longest of the conversation. I let it be as long as it needs to be. That was, Patricia starts. A choice, I say. You placed it carefully. I heard it. She does not answer. Patricia. My voice is even. Completely even. My daughter's name is Nora Elena Vasquez-Holloway. Both names. The whole name. That is the name on the trust document. That is the name she will carry when she is 25 and the trust matures and she has $1.1 million to build whatever she decides to build. I pause. My grandmother understood what you intended for my daughter. She planned for it 4 years ago. She was more patient than either of us. I hear something that might be a breath or might be the beginning of a word that does not arrive. I would like Nora to have a relationship with her father's family, I say. I would like that genuinely. But it will not be the relationship where she is served from the wrong dishes and photographed in the guest room and called by half her name. That version is finished. Daniel is at the kitchen doorway. He came downstairs while I was talking. He is in his Christmas morning flannel shirt holding a cup of coffee, and he is very still in the way that means he has heard enough to understand and is performing the surgery. I hold his gaze. He gives one small nod. On the phone, Patricia says, I would like to come over. Not today, I say. Today is Christmas. Today my daughter is using her new art set and we are making her grandmother Rosa's tamale recipe, and we are having exactly the Christmas she deserves. I pause one final time. You are welcome to call next week. We can discuss what a real relationship with Nora looks like, but I want you to think about something before you call. What? My grandmother came to this country with $40. She did not have a Holloway name or a Maplewood house or a table with gold charger plates. What she had was the understanding that the people who try to make a child small are always afraid of how large she will become. I let that sit for exactly 1 second. Nora is going to be very large, Patricia. You can be part of that, or you can keep being afraid of it, but you cannot do both. I hang up. The cardinal is still on the fence post. Daniel crosses the kitchen and puts his arms around me from behind, and we stand at the window together without speaking, and upstairs Nora is explaining something to her art set in the serious, caring voice she uses when she is fully committed to a project. Here's how it's settled. Because you deserve the full accounting. Patricia called on December 30th. The conversation lasted 40 minutes. It was the first conversation I have had with my mother-in-law in 6 years that did not require me to translate anything. She did not apologize for the bowl directly. She did something more interesting. She asked what Nora's favorite color was. I told her. Blue. Specifically, the blue of the icing on the grocery store birthday cake she picked out herself last March. It is a small thing. I know it is a small thing. But in the language Patricia and I have always spoken, small things are the only things that have ever been said clearly. In January, Daniel had the longer conversation with his mother, the one I had waited 6 years for him to be ready to have. I was not in the room. That was his surgery to perform, and he performed it. He told me afterward that she cried and that he let her, and that he said what needed to be said anyway. I am proud of him for that in a way I find difficult to articulate. The trust remains intact. Clara Mendes continues as trustee. When Nora is 25, she will receive $1.1 million built by a woman who arrived in this country with $40 and the absolute conviction that what you build with your hands belongs to the people you trust with your love. The photo of Nora on Patricia's bookshelf, the one half hidden behind the plant in the guest room, was moved to the mantel in February. I noticed it the first time we visited after the new year. I did not say anything about it. Some things you let land quietly. My grandmother came for Easter. She sat at my kitchen table and held Nora in her lap and listened to her explain the art set and every color in it, and why blue was the most important one. My grandmother looked at me over Nora's head with the expression of someone who has been patient for a very long time and has just watched the patience become something real. I thought about what she said, about small and large, about fear. I thought about a dog bowl on a Christmas table, and a trust document 4 years in the making, and a cardinal on a fence post in the snow. And I thought about my daughter, who does not know yet what her great-grandmother built for her, who does not know yet that she has been protected since before she was old enough to need protecting, who is right now at the kitchen table pressing her crayons hard against the paper the way she does when something matters to her. She is going to be very large. That is the thing Patricia was afraid of. That is the thing my grandmother knew. That is the only thing, in the end, that was ever worth protecting. That is my story. If it stayed with you, if you have ever watched someone try to make a child small and felt that door close quietly inside you, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if you have ever had a person in your life who built something for you before you knew you needed it, tell me about them in the comments. I read everyone. If you have not subscribed yet, I would love to have you here for the next one. I will see you then.